Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
People that don't act like people. Hello/X/. I want to share with you a few stories that I'm really not sure what to make of. I'd really appreciate theories or other ideas. Pretty sure the person I am talking about is not a human at this point and is trying fake it till she makes it. The story starts some 5 years ago. Back then I was still a biochem student in London. Everything is good and nice as everyone starts to sort their shit out. Lectures are structured so that one gets to the same level of knowledge regarding chemistry and biology to ensure no one is left behind. This ends after a few weeks of intro lectures. Most are seemingly on the same level. Some are slower, but they either catch up or drop out, so for the most part everyone is now on equal footing. Everyone apart from Cindy. My first encounter with Cindy went something like this. Please get into groups of 5, in the rows that you are sitting in. Choose a topic to do and do it. Hand it in at the end of the lecture. You will be marked as a group. Lecture is 2 hours long, so that's ample time to do a project. The brief is being projected so we can follow it. Get into group. I only know one person by name. I will call her Neta for this story. Neta and I introduce ourselves and the others do too. Chinese exchange student 1, Chinese exchange student 2, and Cindy. I should have noticed at this point that Cindy's voice was very, and I mean very quiet, but she spoke very clearly so I could understand her when she said, "My name is Cindy." We chose a project by voting on it. As I listed off the 10 topics that were up on the board, even the Chinese exchange students seemed to get the hang of the voting thing relatively quickly. It was a simple show of hands of what would you be okay with doing, so that we could eliminate the topics nobody wanted. Simple enough. Not for Cindy. Cindy didn't vote, not for one topic. We only had so much time in which we should really get it started, so Neta asked her why she wasn't voting. Oh, me? Okay, sorry, I will do it. She had no accent, so that made me think that there was no possible way a language barrier had hindered her understanding. The voting started again. Only this time, Cindy voted for every topic possible. We eventually narrowed it down to upstream-downstream production for the pharma industry, and we got to work. Books out, and we divided up what we each wanted to work on so that we could bring it all together after an hour and work on the project as a whole. Cindy chose health and safety. There's a section of the course book that directly shows what steps are taken to ensure safety, so that is an easy way to get some good marks in. We get to work on our little pieces. Cindy does nothing other than stare into her book. Neta confronts her on it after a while. At this point, I'm thinking maybe she's having a bad time, like when you've lost a loved one and you just sort of drift through the day. What is foam? What? Foam. She turns her book and points with her finger to a diagram showing where a tube goes into a vat labeled foam regulators. Foam is like bath foam, you know? Bubbles. The was very loud and didn't really fit in with her general quiet disposition. She would go on to do this relatively often. Cindy makes a note of this. Something I later saw was simply a scribbled word "bafoam." We end up finishing her work for her. As the time draws ever closer, she had done no work whatsoever. Whatever we do, she simply nods. This wasn't very exciting, I know, but it was only my first encounter with her. Shit got a lot stranger after that. After this, we generally sat elsewhere as working with Cindy would be a genuine hindrance to us. Cindy still sat in the exact same spot for that lecture for the rest of the year. Not alone, but people tended to move away from her after a while. Cindy has a habit of staring at people during a lecture, rather than looking at anything useful. For the rest of the first year, I would catch her staring at me. The usual response when you get caught looking at someone you don't know is to look away. Not Cindy. She continued staring. I never saw her outside of lectures throughout the whole of first year. The start of second year was a great deal more intense. I generally stuck to the people who knew what they were doing. This included a guy with moderate Asperger's syndrome. Not much of a conversationalist, but friendly, and more importantly, very, very good at chem equations. I learned quite a lot from him. including the fact that the university had a program to help people on the autistic spectrum with their work and counseling for dealing with university life. This made it quite popular for people on the spectrum to attend here. It was then my thinking that Cindy was simply one of these people, and I put her odd behavior down to that. The second year allowed us to specify what modules we wanted to do. This meant smaller classes. The first of these was molecular biochem. I sit down in a small classroom and begin to unpack my things. I started to feel that feeling you feel when someone is looking at you. I glance up and look around. Standing in the corner, I see Cindy staring at me. She opens and closes her mouth in a very strange way, almost like she was trying to catch a small fly with her mouth. She does it again. I give her a questioning look. She simply does it a third time and sits at the closest table available to her. The lecture starts, and everyone's getting down to do some learning. I occasionally glance back to see her looking at someone else, opening and closing her mouth like she had with me. I'm now a little more interested as to why she is doing this, so I observe her in intervals throughout the lecture. This is a short list of what I observed. She changes the person she is looking at once she has opened and closed her mouth a few times. Once she's switched, she smiles for a few moments and then opens and closes her mouth. She increases the speed at which she opens and closes her mouth. When she smiles, it's a very fast change from smiling to not. The lecture was boring, so I felt at the time the biological field notes I was taking would be an amusing story to tell later. I saw her do this every time we were in that room. The only other lecture we shared was in a large auditorium where she didn't do it. About 2 weeks later in the same room, she sat a lot closer to me, row behind me, one seat to the right. She started to do her thing again. At first it just sounded like her lips opening and closing, but when the lecturer let us do a calculation in silence, I was able to hear her better. She wasn't just opening and closing her mouth, she was breathing words. Hi, 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 hi. She was trying to say hello to the people she was staring at. Having decided to work with the Asperger's guy during molecular biochem, on some bullshit project we got talking on odd tics. He has to help him cope in social situations after he started to throw his pen around accidentally. He was cool with this and laughed it off. I asked him if he knew about Cindy from the sessions they had together with the other Spectrum kids. No, I've never seen her there. Oh shit. Smaller events continued to happen throughout year 2 as the bigger thing happened in year 3. Mid-year 2 and I've pretty much established a good group of friends. We work well together and they're fun to drink with. They too have noticed Cindy's off behaviors. We laugh about it in the bars we go to, which makes me feel kind of bad. Until Cindy started to come to the bars too. She'd never order anything for herself. She'd just sit and look at people. She once ordered a sandwich which she ate by shoving it into her mouth in one go, and ended up getting mayonnaise on her face and hands. She didn't bother washing or even wiping it off. During a lecture, the lecturer stopped explaining something and asked, "You in the back left, are you all right?" The whole class looks back to see Cindy scratching her chest quite vigorously. "Yes, I'm just itchy, thank you." She immediately stops after saying this and pops herself back in. It's shortly after this that she adds me on Facebook and messages me with, "Hi, did you like what you see? What are you up to?" I am weirded out by this, so I never reply but can see that she is typing. I unfriend her. I don't want to get in trouble for any sexual harassment or anything like that. Year goes by without further major incidents. She does get into some problems at the canteen though, as she took food without paying, not even on a plate. She just grabs a morsel and carried it away. She was banned from the canteen. Year 3. At this point I'm going to stop giving lecture context etc. as I am CBA to type it out. I'm still studying at this point. Get on the bus home. Cindy is on the bus too. Has never gotten this bus before. Sits next to me. Hi. Hello, Cindy. Going to try and be civil and be a decent person. She gets out a tube map, subway network in London for those that don't know. Points to Turnham Green, really fucking far out of the way. Come to my house. I will make you good food. That's what friends do. No thanks, that's okay. I'm going to eat at home. Where is your home? Warwick Avenue. This was a lie, but that's where the bus was going. Where on map is that? I straight up point to where we already are. Oh, it's nice there. Can I come and see? Yeah, sure, just not today, okay? When? The weekend. Okay. I got off at the next stop as she'd started to scratch her chest vigorously again. Midterm break, get out of uni, go straight to train station to go to my parents for the time off. Cindy is following me, not obviously, but I know she's behind me somewhere. She may think she's smart, but she can't get through the barrier at the station without a ticket. I'm going out of the city, so I'm safe. I go through the barrier and find my seat on the train. Cindy gets on the train. How the hell? Does her mouth high thing, leaves, message some of my friends in the group chat to tell them what happened. They're half amused, half worried. A female friend of mine opens up. Similar things have happened to her too regarding Cindy. Cindy followed her into a small shopping center and went into every shop my friend went into and left when she left. Things got worse after graduation. Messages on Facebook, I got rid of my Facebook. She texts me somehow and calls me numerous times, leaving bizarre voicemails. So I'm going to change my phone number.
There's this goth girl who frequents the cafe I work at. Not edgy teeny bopper mall goth shit, but like hippie Victorian goth. She can't be more than like 22, but she's weird, unsettling. Not really creepy, just has this vibe about her that you feel sort of on edge around her. She comes in 3-4 times a week and gets coffee or tea, and spends a couple hours doing classwork or writing down weird symbols and shit from old books. Now, there was this popped collar dude bro type who used to come in a lot to hit on the girls studying there or complain our drinks were bad or overpriced, and he one day made the mistake of trying to flirt with her. She didn't even acknowledge him, so he just kept getting more and more in her face and obnoxious. Finally, the shitty limp-wristed manager threw him out. Heard from a classmate that a couple days later that dude got brought to the hospital and spent a couple weeks there with some horrible illness that nobody could figure out what the fuck it was. All the tests kept coming back negative. I wouldn't be surprised if it was her doing.
Be cycling in the forest. Snow is slushy and still on the ground. Spend all day carving a line. Notice a few people walking down. I speed downhill so I don't injure them. Wait at the bottom for the two. Just a young couple appeared. Hike the bike back up. Hit the top and turn around to see tall man, matted hair, disgusting scent, dark, almost black eyes, old huge boots, clothes worn since yesteryear, skinny with pot belly. He just stands there, back to me. Wasn't sure if I heard anyone hiking in the slushy snow behind me. I walk slowly down and have to pass him. I got within 2 feet of him to get around to bike down again. Stares at me and I stare into his black eyes. He chuckles like, Walk further down and he is still looking off into the distance towards me but not at me. Get on my bike and ride home. The day changes from sunny to cloudy. Bike ride home was horribly windy. Dog's not home, get inside and my cat's outside. I left her inside. Clean my bike because I'm a clean freak. Hours pass with me keeping it quiet, enjoying the nice snowstorm through the windows and kitten. Warm tea. The snowstorm stopped with what seemed to only stop around my house property. See a figure walking tall. The shadow figure couldn't walk into my yard because of the prayers I put there. I think that and notice that's where the storm ceased. My stereo starts changing CDs a lot and stops on the CD Trivium Ascendancy. I listen and watch it observe me as I do it, while petting my cat. CD stops and then the storm passes and turns sunny. Can't stop thinking about this because that man seemed odd. Like I didn't hear or see boot prints on the trail I was at, only seen mine and the 2 kids' prints in the snow. Why was he looking across the water? What made the weather change and my cat pulling a Houdini out the house? Where was my chained-up dog? My neighbor's house looked empty and everything was quiet after that encounter.
Loiter in and around the old cemetery when we were about 12. Cemetery is Protestant on one side and Catholic on the other, divided by a long straight path from top, where we sit, to the bottom. Summer. Sitting around. See guy walking up the path. Biker type, leather jacket, band shirt, bald head, long ponytail, tall but skinny, wearing sunglasses. Gets to the top, looks at us, and leaves. Same time every day he does the same thing and never speaks. October comes around and it starts getting darker earlier. Haven't seen a guy in a couple of weeks. About 9 p.m. Decide to go to shop. One of the friends is the fattest, laziest kid there is. He's about 16 stone and point blank refuses to move. Says he'll just wait there for us. Walking down the bank, coming back from the shop. See fat friend running up the bank faster than a horse with 6 legs. Tells us that the guy showed up, stopped at the top and casually looked around but hadn't noticed fat friend. Suddenly does notice fat friend. Fat friend sees guy has blood all over his hands and all down his jeans. Asks fat friend if he can come over here a second. Fat friend bolts like a bat out of hell. Never see guy again. He's definitely the type to make a story up, but definitely not the type to use physical energy, unless he absolutely had to. I hate walking through it when it's dark.
I'm a night owl, can never sleep unless I'm exhausted. Always go for walks later at night. Decide to be weird and creepy, and whoever I see still awake late at night in their house, I would just stand outside and look at them from the sidewalk. Do this all the time. Cops called every now and then. This is fun.jpg, really cold day in November. Head out. Find one house in 3 neighborhoods with lights still on. Bald guy sitting at his table scribbling stuff down. Sees me, I wave. Sits there staring at me. I stare back, he waves. He gets up, and the lights go off. Seconds later, his door opens. Hey, want to come in? I take a few steps closer. Notice he has one hand behind his back. You can talk to me about whatever you want. Couple more steps. Notice something metallic and a handle. Knife. Come on in. I start laughing as I take a couple steps back. Oh, come on. Turn around and walk away, still laughing. He closes the door and starts walking after me. I continue to laugh and start running into the nearest alley and zigzag my way through alleys out of there. Yup, never did that again.
I was once friends with a legit sociopath. Unfortunately, there aren't any really spooky stories to share. You just understand that he was a scary dude if you met him and talked to him a lot. He was emotionally abusive, and he seemed to have a really violent view of his relationship to other people. He would passive-aggressively work against his friends, and he didn't mind being openly confrontational in public. Like one time we were all out drinking, and he got into an argument with people at another table. We make it clear that we don't support him and want him to leave, and he starts talking shit about us, too. Eventually, shit almost gets physical between him and one of the dudes at the other table, and he, the guy we're out with, gets banned from the restaurant. But despite being banned and insulting all of us, he keeps coming back. It's like negative feedback from other people just didn't register with him at all.
I've kind of put this together over the years, think my neighbor may have had a weird personal history. When I was a kid, I decided to dig a bomb shelter in my backyard. We lived on half an acre. There was plenty of space for one, and all of the other yards were either fenced out a few, or they were blocked by huge tangles of vines. Still, I had one neighbor who kept telling us, my friends and I was weird and they kind of followed along, must have been 7, to fill in the hole. We dug at kids' pace, ended up getting to about 4 feet deep, and we hit an old travel case like guys who'd sell shit back in the day would carry. We opened it up and it was full of saw blades and butcher knives wrapped up in plastic bags. We didn't really think anything of it, thought it was an interesting find, threw the saw blades around and played with the knives, but later that neighbor went and filled in the hole without anyone asking him to. Many years later, my dad told me that the same guy had requested to bypass that line in our backyard when we first moved in, had told my dad, "You'll be sorry," when my dad said no. This is 100% true, and I still wonder if there's anything I should do in retrospect.
Some questions for you to determine the proper course of action. 1. How long ago was this that you found the travel case? How old are you now? 2. Have you told your father about this? I mean, I'm guessing you did, but that seems like something that should have been addressed right around the time that it first happened. What kind of parents let their kid build a bomb shelter and then play frisbee with saw blades? 3. Does your family still live there? 4. Has anyone checked to see if the travel case is still there? 5. Does the neighbor in question still live there? 6. How much contact has your family had with said neighbor? 7. It seems obvious what happened here, does it not?
I'm 27, so this was 20 years ago. My parents were crazy. I was kind of a latchkey kid, didn't have any supervision. I talked about the briefcase several times with my parents, but they were both pretty indifferent about anything I encountered. I think the briefcase stayed in a shed, but the house was foreclosed on maybe 10 years ago after Mom died. Nobody's lived there in a decade. Neighbor still lives behind the house as far as I'm aware, again dead family, but his son was one of my best friends growing up. He was a bedwetter and animal torturer. We fell out of contact. My dad hated that guy. I don't know what obviously happened. It's like, really, do serial killers actually pop up in the world and live more or less normal lives after the fact?
He probably wasn't a serial killer. Some people just have to murder. Vengeance is a strong emotion action. He could have been a normal, cool guy that just murdered someone at some point. I know I've been close to it. I'm not evil, crazy, edgy a little, I guess, or anything like that. I'm a normal person that, in extraordinary circumstances, could have killed someone. He just doesn't want to get caught.
I got a good one that happened to me a little over 20 years ago. I'm getting old. Be me. Go to college in Madison, Wisconsin. A lot of people told me before I went that there were some weird people who lived there. Imamani don't care. .jpg 2 years after I get accepted and start taking classes, I go to the library late at night to study for midterms. They have little cages that you can study in and lock for protection. I study quietly until I'm one of the last people in the building. I see a shadow in the corner of my vision and turn around to see a huge 6'6" man. I was only 5'11". The guy was wearing a dirty trench coat and had suspicious stains on his pants and boots. He had scratches and cuts all over his face and bruises on his hands. The ghoul just sat there completely still, staring at me. He had a wide, creepy grin. I start getting scared but don't want to show it, so I stutter, "Well, what do you want?" He just says politely, "Let me in." I start losing it and I tell him to leave. All he does is repeat, "Let me in." I tell him to go away. He just sits there for a minute or two and then says, "No, I'm coming in." He starts kicking the door and yelling gibberish. Between 5 and 10 minutes later, he realizes he's not making any progress and calmly says, "I'll be back." He then leaves. I wait until I can't see him and leave the cage and sprint the other way. Then I leave the building and call 911 on the nearest payphone. They never catch the creep. To this day, I make sure I am never alone at night.
Weird shit happened to me, and after talking to some kids at school the next day, it seemed to have happened to other kids too. Live in West Virginia. Yes, it's a state, not the west part of Virginia. Be in like 8th grade, walking around after school with a buddy. It was almost winter time, kinda chilly, frost on cars, etc. Walking past the post office on the way to the park. Some dude approaches us, says he's working for a company in Florida or Cali, and is assigned to work in West Virginia for the month. Says the company he works for is trying to design a sweatless sock, or a sock that prevents sweating. Explains how everyone's sweat, feet, walking pattern, etc. is different. Asks us to sell him our socks, and says he will pay us $5 each and give us a new pair of socks so we aren't sockless. Being young and naive, we decide to do it. Dude handed us our money, asked that we each grind our toes around in our shoes for a few minutes to try and get the sweat to soak up in the socks. We do it, take off our socks, and he asks that we place them in individual sandwich baggies, then date the bag. Do so, he hands us our socks, and then he asks if there were any parks or any meeting places where he could collect more socks from people. He said adults and children. So that kinda made me feel a bit more at ease knowing he wasn't only wanting socks from kids. We tell him there is a church meeting up the road that the school's Christian club runs a few days each week. He thanked us, we put on our new socks, and continued on to the park. It's not really scary or spoopy or anything like that. But as I got older, my friend had moved away, but visits from time to time, and the last time he was in, we started talking about being little assholes back in the day, and somehow we started talking about the sock dude. Now, being grown adults, we both thought about it and how the dude may have had some really fucking weird fetish for socks, and he probably still has them to this day.
Walking home from work at 8 p.m, Scotland winter, dark as hell outside. Take my usual shortcut through the weird housing estate area. Walking along minding my own business when I hear a tapping sound. Quiet but getting louder and faster. Look to my right. Tall, gaunt, bald man with his face jammed right up against his house window, looking out at me. He's tapping the window with one hand up above his head and gesturing to me with the other to come closer. Nope.jpg. Walk faster. He slips along this big window pane, face smooshed against it, banging getting louder, gestures getting more aggressive, wide-eyed. Screw this. Jog home. Ever since this happened, I always keep an eye on that house when I walk by it, but I've never seen him again. He just looked deranged. It was a nice-looking house as well, but he looked like a homeless psycho dressed in patchy, stained clothing.
Go hiking with two good friends, M and A. A is fairly normal, very into politics, but other than that, just your average Joe. M is a bit different. He's an interesting guy to be around, but has no concept of risk or any fear of death and tends to lapse into very dark moods. I mean that in a legitimate way, not a too edgy way. He literally doesn't care about injury or death, just shrugs it off. We set up camp near a set of cliffs and go hiking for a few hours. Great fun, come back, light a fire, eat, and go to sleep. That night, I'm woken up by the sound of zips and movement. Hear a zip again and footsteps walking away from camp. I just assume it's someone going for a piss. 40 minutes later, whoever it was hadn't come back. I assume it's M and wake A to go look for him. We walk back up the paths we took the day before and see a small fire on the cliff edge. Pick related is the cliffs, beachy head. As we get nearer, we see that there are two people standing by the fire. One is M, and the other silhouette looked female. Assuming they're going to throw themselves off, we run up a huge hill to get to them. The second person sees us, hugs M, and walks off towards the car park. M still stands there by the fire. M. What was that about? Turns out he had got up to pee, had a crisis and went to kill himself. Met this girl also planning on killing herself. They spent all that time talking about why they shouldn't. M refused to say anymore and walked back to camp. A walks him back as I go to talk to this girl. She seemed nice enough, so I asked her why M wanted to off himself. What do you mean? He said he was trying to find the gods. I chat a little more with her before saying goodbye and walking back to camp. M spends the rest of the weekend in an uncharacteristically good mood. I think he found his gods that night.
This was during the abduction craze in America. 2nd grade, maybe 3rd. After school, I go to my best friend's house every day until my mom gets off work and picks me up. She was best friends with my best friend's mom. Family friend is a babysitter for us, pretty much just plays video games with us and cooks for us. Playing outside in the cul-de-sac, he lives on the top of it. Out of fucking nowhere, a giant white van appears. It's doing like over 50 in a neighborhood. Almost runs into me and my friend, slams on his brakes and just stares at us. Babysitter grabs us and throws us inside, locks all the doors and closes all the blinds except for the ones upstairs so we can see him. Older, 40s maybe. Fat and unkept facial hair. He just fucking sits there, not even in the driveway, the middle of the cul-de-sac for like 2 hours. Babysitter is freaking the fuck out, calls best friend's mom and asks if she should call the cops. I don't remember if she did or not. He eventually just drives off before anyone gets off work. The strange thing was this continued for like 2 weeks, if I recall correctly. Every day at the same time, he would just show up and sit there staring at the house for no reason and leave at the same time. It was fucking weird. That house was super paranormal though. I still have nightmares about it.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.